How many of you either suffer from or know someone that suffers from hypothyroid, for example? Right? How about high blood pressure? You have it or know somebody who has high blood pressure, or depression or anxiety. How about ADD, ADHD, OCD? Okay, we're gonna crush all of these today. Because the next time, because these conditions run in families, we call them genetic. I spoke to a room almost 3 times this size, full of physicians once, and I asked the entire room, I said, by show of hands, how many of you are treating patients for these conditions? Genetically inherited hypertension, genetically inherited hypothyroid, genetically inherited drug or alcohol addiction, hypercholesterolemia, hypertriglyceridemia. By the time I'd gotten through 4 or 5 of those, 100% of the hands in the room were up. And then I asked this question. If these are genetically inherited diseases, can any of you tell me what gene is being passed from generation to generation that's causing those conditions? Not one physician can tell you that. Do you know why? Because that gene doesn't exist. We've mapped the entire human genome. There is not one gene in the human body that we don't know, and yet no one can tell you what gene is being passed from generation to generation that is causing those conditions. And if that gene doesn't exist, that means that that condition doesn't exist. So then what is it? What is it that's running in families that causes drug or alcohol addiction or hypothyroid or hypercholesterolemia or all of these other conditions like high blood pressure and what have you to transcend through generations? You do not inherit disease. What you inherit is an inability to refine a raw material, and that deficiency leads to that disease. And I'm going to tell you today how you can find it and how you can fix it. And so my big, bold promise to you today is that if you do what I ask you to do, we will add, on average, 7 years to the lifespan of everyone in this room. 7 years, and I know this because this is the research that I did for 22 years. And we trace these back to these very specific conditions. So what happens is, first we have to understand in the human body, there's not a single compound known to mankind, not one, that enters the human body that is used in the format that we put it in. So what happens to every single compound, every nutrient, every mineral, every amino acid, every protein, carbohydrate, every element that enters the human body goes through a process of being refined. It's called methylation. If your body cannot make this conversion, you have a deficiency, and it leads to some of the most common conditions that we suffer from every day that we accept as a consequence of aging. But if we learned how to go back into the human body and find out what that raw material was that was missing, and we just put it back, you would be shocked at how well this machine can perform. Because God put us here to thrive, not to be average. We're supposed to have it all, but we accept such an erosion of our baseline sense of normalcy. We supplement purely for the sake of supplementing. We take advice from all kinds of gurus and industry leaders about what we can do to improve our state of optimal health, and we forget to ask our own body what it needs to do its job. When you deplete certain raw materials in the human body, it leads to dysfunction. I'll give you a very simple one. We would see single nutrients depleted in somebody's blood work. Take vitamin D3, for example. That's the single most important compound in the human body. If you're not getting enough sunlight, you need to be supplementing with this. And vitamin D3 is the only vitamin that a human being can make on our own. Not a single cell in your entire body lacks a receptor for that vitamin. So how important do you think vitamin D3 is to human function? So what happens is vitamin D3, as we age, and it gets lower and lower and lower and lower. Once it gets into the single digits for a long period of time, you eventually end up with rheumatoid arthritis-like symptoms. You don't have rheumatoid arthritis, but when you walk in to see your primary care doctor, you start explaining your symptoms, how your knees and your hips and your ankles hurt, and you're stiff and achy across the back of your shoulders, and it hurts now to make a fist. And about 25% of the treating physicians will say, you know what, you've got rheumatoid arthritis. No blood work, no SED rates, no counter check. You've got rheumatoid arthritis, and we're going to start you on corticosteroids, right? Well, we knew in the insurance industry, because we chase death rates back to prescriptions, we knew that if you started corticosteroids, you had 6 years and 1 day until you were having a joint replacement. So now you had a clinical deficiency in a very simple compound in your body. You were missing vitamin D3, caused your joints to ache, and now you were diagnosed with a condition you didn't have, which led you to take a medication that you didn't need, which 6 years and 1 day later led you to have a joint replacement that wasn't required. As soon as you had that joint replacement, I would start to reduce what was called your ambulatory profile, how well you walk. Sitting, by the way, is the new smoking. Sedentary lifestyle is the leading cause of all-cause mortality right now. So now you start to reduce your motility. Then I would bring in all the diseases that exacerbate with reduced motility. So you were missing vitamin D3, got diagnosed with a condition you didn't have, took a medication you didn't need, had a joint replacement that wasn't required, and now all forms of mortality are coming from your future closer to the present moment. And I could not only predict the onset of, but the severity of, and how quickly you would succumb to that disease. And I saw this happen over and over and over and over again. You See, we have lost faith in humanity and mankind and the ability of this to heal this. This is the most powerful thing that we have.